Okay, so happy you all to rise. Pleasure to meet you. Representative Kaczynski, would you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation, indivisible.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence. Okay, thank you very much. Please be seated, and thank you all for coming, members and also members of the executive committee. And a moment, yeah, please call the roll.
You want the notice right there?
No, I want you to call the roll, please.
Bailey?
Here.
Bixby?
Representative Bixby is with us on the Zoom.
Identify where?
What's that?
He needs to identify where.
Okay, Peter, can you hear us? Representative Bixby?
You're muted.
You're muted. Justin, are you unmuting him?
Yes, I am. I can hear the audio. It's not great, but I can hear it.
We can hear you fine. Please identify yourself and state where you are and who is with you.
Peter Bixby, Representative Peter Bixby. I am in the Milwaukee Airport C concourse, and there are a lot of other people who I have no idea who they are in the general vicinity.
We'll kind of skip the identification of who's in the room. Right. Okay. Thank you very much for being with us, and I hope you'll be able to hear.
Representative Vernon?
Here.
Fitzpatrick?
Present.
Harrington?
Here.
Corrigan?
Here. I'm sorry I'm late.
Howard?
Here.
Cassie's running late. Newton?
Here.
Petrie?
Here.
Potenza?
Present.
Celia Rich?
Here.
Schmidt?
Here.
Southworth?
Here.
And Wall?
Here.
So
So
and so is Kaczynski.
okay, so now you can read the notice of meeting, please. Right, but they're not members of the executive.
Notice is hereby given that a public meeting of the Strafford County Legislative Delegation Executive Committee is scheduled for Friday, August 25th, 2023 at noon. This meeting will require a physical forum, but will provide remote access for the public and will be held as noted above in the Cafe Conference Room, lower level of the William A. Grimes Justice and Administration Building, 259 County Farm Road, Dover, New Hampshire, to conduct the following business. Approve the minutes of May 5th, 2023, public hearing and meeting, update on site work and design planning for a new nursing home, discuss and recommend approval of increase in tariffs as outlined in House Bill 36, discuss replacement of county attorney body, review and approve second quarter 2023 budget report, and any other business which may legally come before the committee.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now item 6 is approval of minutes of the executive committee meeting of May 5th, 2023. For a motion, Representative Wall.
I move that we adopt the executive committee meeting.
Or a second.
Second.
Second by Representative Petrie. Thank you. Is there a correction, emendation, or deletion? Seeing that, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. So item 7, update on site work and design planning for the new nursing home. Mr. Bauer, are you going to speak to that?
I am. Excuse my hopping. I had a recent hip replacement. The original area that was discussed, which was adjacent to Hyder House, turned out to be not usable, basically due to wetlands issues that would take years to address and potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the commissioners authorized that we take a look at the entire county parcel of land and found that the best parcel is adjacent to Eric Drive. So if you were leaving here and going towards Dover, Eric Drive is the first street on the left. The county owns the land up to the back of the houses on Eric Drive. That area has minimal wetlands, and the commissioners have authorized further testing on the site, which will begin this week. Next week. But the initial wetlands review shows that it's a positive building site.
Thank you very much. Well, those of you who are on the oversight subcommittee met about a week ago, and we reviewed this entire subject at great length. And I would just comment that we also found some so-called Indian lands, indigenous lands and artifacts. And on the previous site, that would have also complicated any use of that parcel and effectively ruled it out. So I think we're probably good on those scores, but that study and investigation still has to be completed. So we're on a little bit of hold with regard to that, but the planning was reviewed at length, and so I think those of you who have an interest in being informed about it are welcome to confer with Administrator Power and the architect to have the necessary information to satisfy your inquiry. But it's all coming along extremely well, in my opinion. So item 8.
Excuse me, just a quick question.
Oh yeah.
Give us the easy one. Is this basically moving to a new location? Basically taking the footprint what used to be over here and moving it over here? Or
no, the footprint's changed. It's become a 5-story facility now, and so it's.
Is that because of the move?
Yeah, it doesn't fit into the.
Okay.
It doesn't fit any longer.
All right, so I'll have to go.
That doesn't fit with the previous design.
Okay, that's what I wanted to be.
You're good? Okay, Representative Berman.
Thank you. I was just wondering, why wasn't the study done before even a plan for building on the wetlands? My understanding that should have been done first.
Well, we had no appropriation. I mean, well, we couldn't start any study until we had an appropriation. So once the appropriation was given, we then had the funds to pay for the study. So we couldn't study it before.
I'm sorry, was that before these new plans? Is that what you're referring to?
What I'm referring to is that we could not study the land to find it to be inappropriate until we got an appropriation, which was done, if you remember, the $6 million plus bond. We couldn't begin any study of any land until we had that money, because we have to pay somebody to do the study.
Previous delegation approved a 6.2.
No, it's current, yeah. So we couldn't do that, and then that's when I mean, that would be the most desirable site. It's closest to the hospice house. It's also the site that's most likely that the state would allow currently me to administer both locations. I don't have any reason to believe they wouldn't let me administer the location if we moved it. I think if we moved it off county property, we'd have to hire a second administrator to administrate Hyder House. But if we keep it on county property, I firmly believe that they would let me continue to be the administrator for both locations. Obviously, saving the county administrators cost a lot of money. You know, there's a big salary there. So we couldn't look until we had an appropriation.
Yes.
So it's a follow-up to that. So I was at the meeting. It was before we were sworn in for the new delegation and for the 6.2. But all of those plans were already done. So why did we do all these architectural plans when we didn't even know if the site was appropriate?
What was appropriated in the past was $65,000 to do an architectural rendition, but it did not give us any funding to, look in the land, dig the test borings, or any of those kinds of things. So it's simply an architectural rendition so that the delegation would just have some sense of what we were thinking about.
Just follow up. How much property does the Strafford County have right now?
It's about 270 acres, but a good portion of the property is in conservation easement. Now, there is a portion of the property that's in conservation easement that allows the county to take it out of conservation easement for a county purpose. So the land that we're talking about by Eric Drive is removable from the easement simply by saying we're going to build a nursing home, and then it comes out of the easement.
Yeah, you just said there were $55,000 appropriated. When was that done?
A couple years ago. I don't have the exact. I mean, I could look up the minutes and give you.
I would definitely like those minutes.
Sure, we'll ask Janet to produce those minutes for you.
In the subsequent vote that appropriated $55,000.
We'll have Janet pull all of that for you. It's all in the minutes.
Other questions?
I think you'll find it was a unanimous vote, Representative.
Representative, what?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, what I recall is a unanimous vote to ask to allow you guys to go forward with the conceptual. I don't recall any vote for an appropriation at that time. You were supposed to go out and get bids, which you got bids from 5 different organizations, and you went with one for $60,000, but you never came. I don't recall you ever coming back to us for that appropriation.
We'll provide you.
I'm looking forward to seeing it at the minutes.
I'm looking forward to providing.
And I can be corrected. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
And we're looking forward to being that little discussion at that time.
Yeah.
Representative.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Has that bond been processed yet?
No, we haven't spent anywhere. There's no, when you're doing a financial analysis, you ask the architect, in this case, to spread out for you how payments are going to be made. And you don't run out and borrow the money until such time as it's needed. Otherwise, you're paying interest on money that you're not spending, and that you cannot invest at the same rate at which you're paying. So the answer is no, it's not. And what we've been doing for this relatively small amount of money, less than 10%, that has been spent to date, we've been just using the county's cash flow to reimburse the architect for the work. We also have the option of, as you know, we've been given or allocated between $15 and $16 million from the state to be used for construction purposes of the nursing home. We have not accessed that. What we'll probably do is access that first. And if the nursing home is not approved, we would have to pay that back. But we would not exceed the $6 million that's been approved by the delegation. So if we can get the free money for a while, by asking the state to reimburse us, we'll do it. If the nursing home is not approved, then we know we have to pay it back, then we would do the bond to pay it back. So in other words, we're trying to avoid paying interest at all costs.
And
Yeah, so might I understand that the free money from the state, you're only going to use the amount equivalent to what has been agreed and approved to be bonded, because to get the 15 million from the state, we have basically, you signed a contract that said we're going to spend 40 million.
You're right.
And so now are you changing that to you're only going to spend 40% of the 6 million that actually has been approved?
No.
So you're going on the 40 million that we haven't made an appropriation?
No. No to both questions.
So what, I don't understand.
You asked, if you go back and ask your question first time, we will not exceed the $6 million that's been approved by the delegation. We cannot. We can only spend the money that the delegation has approved, even though now, if the delegation then approves a nursing home, we can then proceed along, and hopefully the timing's right, that we can then access that between 15 and $16 million, which is 40% of what we would have completed in the time frame that we're allowed by that grant money. So the answer is no, we cannot spend more than the $6 million. Will I use it? Sure, it's free. It's free. But knowing that I'd have to pay it back if the entire nursing home project was not approved. But we cannot spend more than the $6 million that was approved by the delegation.
Thank you for that answer.
Okay, Representative Harder.
Yes, the previous plan, you looked, well, much farther in advance than we usually expect government to, although I thought that was good, about 50 years, by which time almost everybody in the room, with one or two exceptions, will be of retirement age. But so how long do you expect this nursing home to last before we'll have to like enlarge it or build a new one? So
the same period of time, and there is options in the plan for 2 additional wings, which could amount to 24, 48 beds, depending on how they were designed and built out. So there is some expansion possibility built in for the future.
all right, thank you.
Okay, so just a moment. So I encourage all the people who are not on the executive committee, on the oversight committee, who've seen the new design concept, okay? Because it looks very different from the original concept that those of us who were here in the previous term all saw. So all of us who have been involved in the theoretical, conceptual period have an idea of something that was, kind of like a clover leaf. It's not the right word. It's a kind of a fleur-de-lis look. You know what that is. If you don't, I'm not sure I know what it is either. Anyway, that's what I think it looks like. This is a very different look. So I encourage you to consult with staff so you have an idea, because it's completely different. The original design was spread wide and only going to be a couple of stories. This, because that design will not fit into the new site. You're having to go vertical 5 stories and so forth, and potential of a couple of additional stories to be added on subsequently if needed. Okay, but it looks very different. So it's hard to conceive of it without looking at it. Have we got it here?
Yeah. What we tried to do also was we received a letter. I think Representative Turcotte authored it, or perhaps it was Representative Newton, that listed several questions and issues that the Republicans had. I can say that comfortably because that's the way the letter was signed. So the new design took into consideration a number of those concerns and addressed those concerns in the design of the building. So when it was understanding that the original design was not going to fit on the Eric Drive site, and there was no site on the county in which the original design would have fit, considering the wetlands in the county. When the redesign took place, it took place to address as many of those concerns that were listed in that original letter from the Republicans on the delegation, to address those things on the new site with the new building.
Okay, yeah. Representative Newton, did you have another question? I thought.
No, I'm gonna talk later. Okay. I'm good now. Yeah.
Representative Harry.
Yeah, one of the things I'm trying to get a handle on this is that we had this original design.
I don't ever remember seeing an actual needs document where we define this is what we need out of a nursing home. Then you put that out, you have people bid on it. So now we've changed design. So whatever those needs were, are they the same? Which was a discussion. How many people per bathroom? How many people per shower? How many people per room? So if we establish those in the original design, and now we've carried those over to the new design, or would we change that criteria? We need in the new design?
The first thing you said. We kept all of those things and just put it into a different shape and design building so that we could accomplish its existence on the county property.
Thank you.
It was discussed the possibility of going off-site for the location, that would be quite a different expense aspect. So this is. The new design is great. I really like it. Has a lot of advantages, but it had to be because the old one
just wouldn't fit.
Just wouldn't fit. Anyway, further questions? Seeing none, okay. Let's move on to item 8. Discuss and recommend approval of increase in sheriff's fees as outlined in HB 36. We're going to speak to this. Again, this is Deputy Joe McGivern, who is the acting sheriff.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard in fine times.
Thank you very much, sir. This is a modest increase to a user fee. It's not a tax. It's within the CPI 7%. It's only a couple of dollars added on to a writ fee for service. These fees are used to offset the cost of actually going out and serving these writs. Gasoline, cruiser costs, sheriff deputy costs, never actually meet our actual cost, but we're mandated by law to make these services for the citizens. It's usually landlords, either tenants, if it's reverse, or if it's private citizens. They all have to come to the sheriff's office to make these legal services, and this is just to offset the costs.
Okay, questions? Representative.
Yeah, how much is, it might be an unfair question to ask you, maybe somebody can answer, how much was the total cost for these fees last year? And how much has been collected so far this year? And what do you anticipate the total increase will be if we pass this, allow it to go through to the end of this year?
Yeah, all of that is available. I don't have it with me, okay. But an example would be to serve a writ execution, they call it, that's the technical term, would be about $30. We also prorate the mileage. So if we have to go to the other end of the county, say New Durham, we're not going to charge you the same mileage that we would if we had to go down the street in Dover. So that varies the rate. But it'll offset it a little bit, increasing it. We could get you those figures, whatever you want to have.
I actually did those numbers. I'm sorry, Joe, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I did those numbers because I knew this was going to come up. So right now, if you look at the page 27 of the budget, which is the very last page, it's the revenue section. You'll see sheriff's deputies fees. It's the third line down from the top of the page. Through half the year, we've made 66% of the projection. Projection was 100. I'm sorry. The projection was 140,000. We've collected 92,440, which is 66%. This increase that you all passed in House Bill 30, I believe it's 36, allowed for a 7% increase because that was the CPI at the time, and then it's allowed to go up based on the CPI for in the future. Honestly speaking, Representative Newton, my discussions with the Sheriff's Department was to get approval or get a recommendation from the executive committee, bring it to the delegation, but not start it till January 1st. Simply because we're on revenue now, and this will give people time to respond to the increase. We don't have we're not sure. I think later on the agenda is going to be a date set or at least a discussion about a full delegation meeting. Some I'm not sure exactly when, that's gonna be up to you all, regarding the replacement of the county attorney. That seemed to be the ideal time to take this up with the full delegation. But consistent with how we do things, that we bring it to the executive committee first, look for an endorsement, and then bring it to the full delegation. We thought we would, considering you all voted for it, or those of you that voted for House Bill 36 voted for this, it would make sense that we introduce it here to be brought to the full delegation. But by the time we bring it to the full delegation, we'd like to give people notice, and therefore we were looking at starting it at the first of the year.
Okay. Yeah, I guess my comment to that would be, the bill says may, it doesn't say shall, and we know may means we either do it or we don't. I'm not opposed to it. What I am opposed to is bringing something in half to 3/4 through the budget cycle. The fact that you are now saying we're not going to do anything till next year, I like that and very favorable of just waiting, not even just bring it up after January. You know, I gotta say this, there's enough heat and attention on the sheriff's department now. We start putting out there, oh geez, they're doing so good, we're gonna give them 7% increase. I don't think that's a good idea to do that right now. I would like to see if there's a way this executive committee could recommend we hold off until next year's budget cycle to review this, if you will. I would be in favor of that.
Okay, discussion.
Certainly your call.
You know,
We're just following the.
yeah, absolutely. It was a law that was passed, and you know, I get that.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so let's have the discussion. I see Representative Southworth first, followed by.
I think I have to wait because I wanted to make the motion. Should we make the motion first before we discuss?
And I still had a question too as well.
We should have the motions for.
I make the motion to
Okay, so
approve the increase in the sheriff's fees as outlined in HB 36.
Okay, is there a second? Second by Representative Wall.
Then can I briefly speak to my motion?
You may speak to your motion, yes.
I would just say briefly, just listening to the plan so far, it seems good to pass this now and then get ready for January so that people all understand the changes and so on. Seems to me if we voted for it in January, you're talking March, which again is partly into the next year. But I think it's a good idea to wait until January. But for me, that means we pass the motion now.
Okay, you want to speak to your second?
I simply want to say I think it's smart planning.
Okay, other comments or questions? Representative Potenzi.
Yeah, I just had a question about, so this really only applies for that one service, correct? Just for the writ service.
Service fee.
So if someone is gonna come in and request that fee, they're the only ones that are gonna, in a sense, have that increase.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. It's a user fee. It's not a tax or a general fee. It's specifically user.
Okay.
Representative Orden, followed by
Representative. From what I understand, somebody who's taking advantage of service, they also have to pay mileage, and that tracks very directly with the cost of driving the sheriff's, the sheriff's vehicle out to the location and serving it. But this is a fee for actually, providing the writ once you get to the location. But there's a lot of cost to go into that too. So does the CPI actually accurately, does it at all track with what the cost of operating the sheriff's department is, or is that?
Chances are that with what, if you look at the CPI, if you take any time in studying it, you'll see that the CPI there is a general CPI, which is what the cities do use for their tax cap. But there's also, the CPI is also broken down into like food and fuel and those types of things. The fuel portion of the CPI is
fuel and food taken out of the inflation rate. They have their own rate.
Yeah, well, that's what I was trying to say. Yeah. They have their own rate, and what I'm saying is it's going to be higher than the standard CPI that this is based on. So this will just go towards making up a portion of the extra cost that the sheriff's department incurs. I'm sorry if I said it wrong, Representative Harrington, but I that's what I was trying to say.
We got there.
Yeah, we got there. This is just gonna make up a portion of it. It's not gonna make up the whole amount because the CPI for fuel is higher than the standard CPI.
Okay, Representative Newton next.
Yeah, the concern I have is, and I know it hasn't happened, but it could. What is the policy in place if, let's say, inflation goes up 7% this year, 7% next year, and then for some reason it starts becoming a negative? Are we stuck with a 14%, or is there some way the law doesn't say that?
It would be reduced.
It could be reduced.
Sure, of course.
Okay. So it's fluid in a sense.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Representative Byrne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So is this service you pay in advance?
Yes.
And so,
Although we do have some accounts that we bill, but if you're unknown to us, you know, and this is like the first time you want to do a service, we ask that you pay us in advance. If it's like a law firm or somebody that, you know, does a number of these services on behalf of clients, we will bill them.
follow up, please.
Please.
So there's not much in collection, so to speak.
No, we found that the people that we extend, let's call it credit to, always pay us.
And lastly, so do those revenues, that's not being taxed to the taxpayers, correct?
That's correct.
So does that go into some type of revolving fund?
No, it's recorded here on page 27 of your budget, the third line down.
Okay.
Every penny that's collected in that goes to offset the taxes. Here it's called sheriff's deputies fees.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're good. Further discussion. Seeing none, call the roll on recommending approval of the increase in sheriff's fees as outlined in HB 36 to give us the instrumentality to do it when the time comes, right? Won't go into effect until it's needed.
I'm a little confused. I thought we were saying January 1st.
I'm recommending January 1st. It's, you know, obviously your call, not mine.
No,
I just recommended January 1st so we could publicize and people could prepare. And wouldn't be surprised if their bill went up. We would have time to give them notice.
Thank you. Everyone understand?
Yes.
All right, clerk may call the roll.
Bailey,
Aye.
Bixby,
Hang on.
Oh, my board is playing.
He's blown off into the. Okay, so.
Aye.
No reason not.
Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
Corrigan,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Newton,
No,
Petrie,
No.
Potenza,
Aye.
Rich, Schmidt,
Yes.
Belford,
Yes.
Wall.
Yes.
11-2.
11-2, it passes. Thank you, everyone. So item 9 is discuss the placement of County Attorney Velarde. As most of us, I think, have already heard, it's been announced that the county attorney has accepted the position with the Attorney General's office beginning. I'll let him speak to the things since he's the one that's doing this. So, Tom, you want to tell us all the specifics of your departure?
Good afternoon, everyone. So I had sent all of you a note indicating that after many attempts by the Attorney General's office to lure me away, they have finally succeeded. They have offered me a position of Director of Public Safety. So in the hierarchy of the Attorney General's office, there's the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General, and then I'm directly below the Deputy Attorney General. So I have many bureau chiefs reporting to me. It is a good time in my career to do this. The Strafford County Attorney's Office has grown quite a bit, but we've also stabilized over the years with a good core of experienced prosecutors. In times past, when I've been asked to look at other positions, I have not felt it was the right time to leave the office to make sure that things were in good order for the people of Strafford County. That was always my top priority. So that was number one. And number two is my kids are a little older now. They don't need me home as much. In fact, they don't want me home as much. So the commute back and forth from Concord, I don't have daycare. I don't have to pick up anyone for school and sports and things. I'm a little more independent and I'm able to do this for myself, given where I am in life. So, and then the third thing was the Attorney General's office has actually had quite an exodus itself of experience. And so I was very gratified that Attorney General Formella, as well as Deputy Attorney General Buffetti, impressed on me that I could really add something to their office as they've watched me train many attorneys here locally. They want me to go and try to replicate what I've done here in Strafford County across the state. So with their great amount of flattery and all those other things that I mentioned, I have elected to take a position with them. I will tell you that I did try to bargain with them to stay longer, in fact, through January, to give as much ramp up time for everyone and for all of you to do what needs to be done. They said they wanted me in May, but we settled on October. So October 5 will be my last day here in Strafford County. October 6 will be my first day at the Attorney General's office. So I look forward to an evening of wonderful vacation before I start my state. So that leaves all of you to, because I am leaving within the first year of my term, there are some arrangements that need to be made under 661.9 for my replacement, which will include, if my recollection serves me, from when I replaced Janice Rundles in the first year of her term, soliciting some applications, and then you all as a delegation will vote for who my successor will be.
That's correct. We have some experience in the state, and those of us who've been around for a while recall, I think Belknap County about 10 years ago or so also had to replace they had to replace the sheriff. But the delegation in that instance, in this instance, will vote, and it's an open vote because we are representing the public. So unlike the elections of our delegation officers, executive committee officers, which is a secret ballot, like the speaker's vote is, this will be an open vote because we are acting in lieu of the public. But it will also be an open candidacy. So even though the current deputy, is Emily here? Well, I believe she's here at the moment. Emily Garrod is currently administering the department and has Tom's recommendation. Nevertheless, it will be open so people will be able to put their names forward, and just like an ordinary election, except that we will be the electorate. We the delegation at the executive committee. So are there questions about this? There'll be more for the delegation when the time comes. Representative Morgan.
Just a two-part question. So I directed to you or to him, who are you replacing? And I believe you've already been approved by the governor and council. Or?
Yes, so Jeffrey Strelzin had that position prior to myself. I believe he was the first person to occupy it. Attorney General Formella, and before him, Attorney General McDonald, before he was Chief Justice, restructured the structure of the office. So that position was created. He was the first to chair that position. I'll be the second.
Okay, so are there questions or comments? Well, I hate to lose you, Tom, because you've been a great service to all of us and the executive committee, but also the delegation and the people of Strafford County. But we understand that this is an opportunity for you to advance your career and possibly even make some more money. That's not a bad thing when you have a family the kids they don't want you around, but when it comes to college time, they will be happy to reappear.
They might not want you, but they'll like your credit card.
Well, one just graduated college. One's a second year at UNH. I have a sophomore at Oyster River, so I have a ways to go.
That's right. More than a penny to pay. Thank you very much. Are there further comments?
I didn't know, Mr. Chairman, if there was any thought about a potential date for a full delegation meeting. I mean, you have half the delegation here. I didn't know if there was, if that's something you wanted to pursue now, or if you're just going to establish a date in the future.
Well, that's one of the reasons we held off on the delegation meeting, because some of us were aware that this was, potentially in play, and there were some other issues. But we thought rather than having repeated delegation meetings, we would try and pull it all together. And I'm open to input. We're going to have to do this, but we have to give the public some time to react to this, and for individuals who may be interested to step forward. So,
yeah, that was my point of order. Is that already kind of regulated, that how soon you have to do the notice, how much notice people have to sign up for an election? I'm thinking that that kind of is already set up somewhere of those timelines. I'm not sure they're random, I guess.
no,
The structure in the past, I think, was really followed the P development position.
Yes.
So we would use the same structure.
So that's helpful. So there really is a plan, a process.
a process. Right.
So I think, I didn't know if the chairman wanted to engage the policy and procedure committee, as you've done with the Pease Development Authority. But we could at any time begin to post notice in the paper to seek applications. I just didn't know how long you wanted to wait on that. That's
well, I think we ought to get that underway as quickly as possible, because to the degree that there's public interest in the position, we want to give as much chance to people to come forward, and so let's get on it.
okay. So I have your authorization to begin that.
Yes, please do. Everything that needs to be done from your side, please let me know, and I'll put together a policy and procedures subcommittee membership, and we'll take it from there. Representative Steve.
Do we need to vote prior to October 5th on Attorney Velarde's departure?
No, we would never make it, because we'd want to give at least 2 to 3 weeks to formulate applications, and then you'd have the policies and procedures committee review those applications. I'm just saying that's been the history. I'm not saying that's the way it has to be done. And then you'd call the full delegation back, which we need at least a minimum of 10, 14 days, Janet?
14 days would be the minimum to get it into
the paper, and the Foster's is no longer local. I think it's Ohio that we work through to get something in the newspaper. So that's added a few days onto it, but we need a paper countywide circulation, and the paper really that only has countywide circulation is Foster's. So that's who we're kind of forced to use. So we won't make it. We're probably at the earliest looking at sometime in November.
So Emily Garrett is extremely well qualified. She's been administering the office for a long time.
She's been deputy for 3 years, I believe, and the gap will be filled quite adequately. There won't be any change in service or quality of service while this deliberation process goes on.
And the other thing, correct me if I'm wrong, Attorney Velarde, is that the Attorney General has also, in an effort to hire you, agreed that there might be some call between the October, and he kind of put the drop dead deadline of the 1st of January, where Tom could be consulted while he was in his new position. Is that correct?
Right. In effect, as a deputy attorney general, right now, I would be able to toggle back and forth as needed.
So that takes a little bit of the pressure off of having someone, right here, right at the beginning of October, when Tom should leave.
So she's going to be acting for a while. Right? So is there a possibility? Is she in the office today?
No, she is out this week on a very well-deserved vacation.
Okay, well, then we can't have her.
So I'm administering the office.
No wonder. Okay. Anyway, so any further items, questions, commentary?
Mr. Chairman, I just, while we're dealing with departures, could I just take one moment? For those of you that have been on the executive committee for a while, you know that every executive committee meeting, Brianna has given you updates on COVID. I can do the update for her this time. We don't have any. However, not a lot of that is due to her work. She has unfortunately provided me her resignation as of September 1st. And I thought at the very least, she would deserve a round of applause from the executive committee and a thank you for all the work she did on COVID and other things that she's done while she's managing COVID. And I thought perhaps she could just have a word with the executive committee while we were talking about vacancies. I mean, filling her vacancy is my job, but her leaving, I thought was something as close as she's been to the executive committee is something that perhaps the executive committee could recognize. So, Rana, if you had something to say.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, after 14 years of working for Strafford County, it was a difficult decision. But for myself, my husband's expanding company, I think it's the right opportunity for me. It's also the right opportunity for Strafford County. COVID was a created position due to the pandemic. Things have become more manageable. Our infection preventionists have worked with closely over the last 3 years. It's plenty capable of being able to manage this moving forward. Some of the other pieces that I had prior to COVID have been filled with very talented individuals. Trying to make administrative hours job a little easier, trying to fill my vacancy. This past month, some of my smaller duties that have trickled out of COVID, I've been able to work with individuals who are plenty capable of continuing that. So similar, I think, to Attorney Velarde, it's kind of the right time for myself, but it's also the right time for Strafford County. Thank you all for your support and your encouragement over the last few years.
Well, I would ask everyone to rise for a round of applause for both of our distinguished companies. We'll be streaming. Okay. Item 10, review and approve second quarter 2023 budget report. So Ray, will you be
I'm happy to answer any questions. One thing I can say with a big smile on my face is revenue's been great. Yeah. I mean, that's been it's been one of our better, I would say, close to a banner revenue year. Now, some of this revenue that you see here is one-time revenue. As an example, PSP reimbursement, second to the bottom line. We budgeted last year. We received $4,500,000. I budgeted $5,500,000, and we received $8,234,000. Remember, that's a one-time payment. We're not going to get that again as the year progresses. And I called Representative Wall, the chairman of the Riverside Subcommittee, when we got that extra payment, and when I was pleased to share the information with her, of course. So I just wanted to, I guess, to start it off by saying the first portion. Now, the other thing that you all did, and I'm sure you'll remember this, when you voted for the budget, you voted for some rather substantial Medicaid increases. You won't see that until next year. The way that it was worded, it's not going to start until January. But we appreciate the consideration. So what will be reflected in next year's budget is those increases that you voted for. That'll be reflected in the budget. So I wanted to thank you for that. So far, the only thing that's been reflected in the budget is a 3% Medicaid increase. Again, the larger increase that you all passed and left some of it at the discretion of the director of DHHS. We will not see that until January. But thank you. We really appreciate it.
Oh, other questions, Representative Herring.
As normal, I have a few questions.
Sure.
Let's start with page 6. It says to do with the sheriff's office. First question is the county sheriff's position. I assume it's a salaried position. Why haven't we spent 54% in the first half of the year? Why isn't it exactly 50%?
There's a little bit of payout going on for, as
is scheduling of the thing. Okay, yes, fair enough. More important question, I asked this last time.
about overtime, and I was said it had to do with 3 longer hospital stays of security for federal inmates. And I noticed that the salaries for the deputies are slightly above the 57%. That may be the same schedule.
Yes.
So it's not like we lost personnel, but overtime is 72% of the year through the first half. So we're still going over overtime. Is that going to slow down?
Yes, I think I can safely speak. Since the sheriff has taken his leave, signed up on his leave, the existing administration has already made, Joe's already made 2 moves to lower, substantially lower the accounts.
Okay. And without getting into rubbing salt in the wound, I assume the in-state and out-of-state travel is going to be curtailed drastically.
Well, that actually is not for what you think.
It might be, but it's 634% of the budget.
That's actually, and I don't mean to pin this on you, Tom, but what that line is for is when there is a warrant for someone that has committed a serious crime in Strafford County, but that person's been apprehended in another state, or
this is in-state.
It could be, in or right. There is still a certain amount of travel in state where we might have to send 2 deputies, a distance away. It doesn't happen that often, but it does happen on occasion.
Moving on then to under page 15 on capital expenses. I'm assuming this paving, this 100% of the budget, that's done.
That's done and completed. We have a little spot left, but Doug, are we going to hand pave that last little spot going into Riverside?
Yes.
So we have a little, we had a drainage the year of 30 inches of rain. We have a little drainage issue that was the front parking lot of Riverside has a drainage running all the way down through. Where the pipe went under the road, and you can correct me anywhere I'm wrong, but where the pipe went under the road, we had to dig that up and clear it so that the parking lot wouldn't flood. So we had to, that little spot has yet to be paved, but you're only talking about this wide, the width of the road. Yeah, it's minor, but I think we're going to do it by our own hands.
On page 16 under RRH administration, the overtime budget at 225% for half the first half of the year. Explanations.
Sure, that's using my transportation aides as nurses' aides. In other words, my transportation aides, which is what's budgeted here, in this case, they're ladies. The ladies that take my residents to doctor's trips or perhaps to Mass General or whatever distance away. They're also nurses' aides. So when they're used as nurses' aides, they're allowed overtime. When they're used as nurses' aides, we charge the overtime to this account. It actually kind of benefits us when we file our cost report. So in effect, most of the money that's been spent is for that purpose, is for allowing them to work as nurses' aides inside the nursing home.
But where is the money coming from? Since more than double spent the overtime money, and since the budget isn't over, it must be somebody else must be substantially not being spent.
Yeah, it's coming out of the bottom line. Like we run like a 50-50 raffle to raise money for staff recognition. And the staff participates. So you see the staff recognition line is quite a bit underspent. My administrator's line is quite a bit underspent. Travel line's quite a bit underspent. So when one line goes over in a budget, we try and bring it,
shuffle it around to stay the bottom line is okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick ones. 19 says to do with nursing. And again, the registered nurses, it's a little over budget on the salary at 60%. And so just wondering what's causing that. And then when you go down to fees and outside services, it's way over.
Yeah.
In fact, it's 122% for the year. So is the fees and outside services, is that for
pool
contract, pool nurses?
Yes, sir. We don't use travel nurses, but we do use pool staff. We try to avoid it at all costs. Now, I will tell you that I have 12. My prediction was with the cut back on the additional subsidy from the federal government for benefits, that it was going to push more nurses aides back into the workforce. As an example, I have 12 nurses aides in orientation and in training. So I believe that those lines are gonna, shrink down as it goes across. And we've obviously made that up in other sections of Riverside, not to mention in the revenue, but in other sections of Riverside.
And one last question,
Yes,
on a more positive note on 27. This may be one of those one-time grants, but I'm just curious as to miscellaneous income. We're up 172% for the year. What is that?
I can tell you exactly what it is. And what you all will remember when the president was deciding when to stop when COVID was over. And there was some, during that time period, the state received more than the allotted amount of Medicaid funds. Normally it's 50-50. The federal government pays 50%. In the case of the nursing home, the county pays 50%. When the COVID emergency was declared, the federal government paid 56%. And therefore the county only had to pay 44%. So the state refunded that money to us. We weren't sure we were going to get it. And actually it's continuing now at a decreasing amount. So it was 6%, then it went down to 5%. Now the next quarter it's only going to be 2%, and the last quarter is going to be 1%.
Basically one shot deal.
One this year, and that's it.
And just one final comment, if I may, I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. Good job from the Department of Corrections. Your overtime's right on target. But I'm still looking.
I fully anticipated it, and to be honest with you, I was really hoping I might be able to say it's 50%. So I'm not sure.
I'll take 52. It's a lot better than 180.
Thank you very much.
Good job. Thank you.
And also, just to mention that we're projecting about an $800,000 in overage in House Correction revenue. If we continue at the current pace with the continued cooperation of the Sheriff's Department. Remember that we have no borders without the Sheriff's transports. And I've gotten a commitment from the Chief Deputy that those transports will be a high priority, a continued or a guaranteed high priority, which we didn't have before.
Working closely together.
Absolutely.
Other questions, comments? Seeing none, we have a motion to approve. Representative Wall moves, Representative Coughlin second. Further discussion. I think we need to call the roll, don't we?
No, we
don't.
No.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, so that takes care of item 10. Now, any other business which may legally come before the committee. So I'd like to begin this section by addressing the obvious. There's been a lot of talk, especially recently, but there was some talk for a while about stuff that was going on with the sheriff. And unfortunately, although the fact that he had received a letter from the Attorney General's office notifying him that he was under investigation, the letter itself was not initially made public, so we didn't know what he was under investigation for. But all of this has been an absolute black box for me as the chairman, but also overwhelmingly for the commissioners, because these investigations are completely confidential. So I've been paying a lot of attention, and I imagine that many of you are also looking at the newspapers, watching television or whatever, trying to figure out what was going on. And then within relatively short order, Sheriff Brave himself did, let it become public what the contents of the letter were. And if you recall, he was being investigated for theft, for falsification of official documents, official matters, and for abuse of office. Well, that's kind of as serious as a heart attack. But we still didn't know what the investigators were finding out and so forth. And there continued to be a fair amount of discussion in public by the sheriff himself, talking about stuff that, in my opinion, did not have any basis. In fact, to wit that he was being subjected to racist obstruction by the commissioners with regard to operating his office and running his office. My personal information, my personal belief is that was totally fictitious, that the commissioners in point of fact have no authority to regulate the office. That's in the purview of the sheriff.
I just want to say one thing. The commissioners had nothing to do with turning Sheriff Brave over to the authorities. That was me. I did it. I discovered it. I confronted him with it. I was uncomfortable with his response. I did a little ask for some help from the accounting department. And when I received that information, I reached out to the county attorney, and we reached out to the attorney general's office to ask them if they would take this case on. It was only then that I briefed the commissioners of what I found. So any implication that the commissioners were involved in this or knew about this or did any of this, it's just plain out wrong. I'm not proud. I'm not happy for what I had to do. I was a supporter of Sheriff Brave, both when he ran for the city council and when he ran for sheriff. I mean, I don't get actively involved in elections, but or in elections that directly affect me. But I contributed to Sheriff Brave's election. I took no pleasure in turning him in, but I couldn't live with myself if I didn't. And so I went directly to the county attorney, and he went directly to the attorney general's office, and then I briefed the commissioners. And further proof of that is the fact that if you read the documents that came from the court, there is a list of us, and which includes me, that Sheriff Brave is not to have contact with because we are all potential witnesses. And should this situation go to trial, the commissioners are not mentioned in there. And certainly if they would have been involved in the investigation, they would have been sheltered from Sheriff Brave's contact, just like myself and a large number of the members of the sheriff's department who contributed to the investigation when they were called upon in front of the grand jury and had no option but to swear that what they were saying was the truth. The grand jury was about 3 weeks prior to the arrest. So I just feel obligated to clear that up if anybody had that misconception.
Okay, so I'm not ready yet. So the thing is that I have been watching all of this very closely, and of course, we're all aware that there was a previous incident involving the sheriff's wife and a DWI arrest. And following that, the two commissioners who were, Commissioner McLaris was a fact witness, so he recused himself of the remaining commissioners, voted to have an investigation have been done because there were a lot of questions. That, of course, is a personnel matter, so the results of that are also confidential. So I have no idea what they are. I don't know what they found. And And it is confidential, so the sheriff knows, because he was one of the people that was a party to the investigation, and it involved him, so he knows. But that also played a role because it was in the papers. And so I have been watching this very closely, but I have not spoken with any of you about anything that I might have learned or anything that I did learn. But most of the stuff I've learned is stuff because Sheriff Brave has been talking to MUR and Union Leader and God knows who else. And he himself has divulged a number of things which have not worked to his benefit. But I have not said anything to the press, and I won't, because it's not my call. So now we've had, as some of you know, because there was a meeting of the commissioners last week with regard to making an offer to the sheriff to go on voluntary, what's it called? Leave, voluntary step aside, let's say again? Administrative, thank you, administrative leave and so forth with pay. And that offer had already been made several times and been declined by the sheriff. I was at the meeting. I was contacted by the press. Again, I declined to respond. But in short order, I received an email from the sheriff addressed to Strafford County. Thought that was about as widely as he could spread it to every one of us, but also every citizen of Strafford County, accepting that of going on administrative leave with pay. And subsequently, he also signed a written agreement. So, so now he's on leave, and Deputy Sheriff McGivern is now running the department. So now let's discuss it if you want to. Representative Potenza, I believe you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I just think we have to be, you know, just in response with Mr. Bauer speaking, I think we have to just be very careful because this is still ongoing. And you know, yes, things could look bad or whatever, but still innocent until proven guilty. And so I think what we are saying, because this is all public and recorded, I think we have to be very careful. As I had a conversation with you and Attorney Velarde, the authority to put him on administrative leave needed to happen through the delegation. The commissioners are elected officials and they don't have that in their authority. And even though I think that our entire delegation will agree with what happened, I think we have to do that. In the essence of full transparency, just because he did make those allegations. There's a swirl of other things that are out there that people might believe that, you know, it could be because of the color of his skin or whatever. You can't have the people that he's, in a sense, accused of those things, even whether it has substance or not, actually be the ones that are offering him that opportunity, in a sense, to, you know, go on paid administrative leave. It needed to happen from us. It's our authority. It's clear in the RSA. And I think we could just write that as a delegation. So I have a letter here from, you know, our entire Republican side asking for a delegation meeting. And I think that, you know, it's just a matter of doing it the right way and with record keeping purposes that, you know, in a sense, it could just be a misstep. And it's just said it's a misstep. I understand that everybody wanted to act on this, but it wasn't done the right way. And I think we have to, especially since we are under the microscope right now, and it's really important for us to do it that way. So.
Point of clarification, because we do have, I mean, I thought we got a response that it was done the right way. So I just want to make sure I didn't misread.
Your Representative Potenza is stating her opinion. And we have the county attorney here. He did give us an opinion on it. And so we did have a discussion that you alluded to. And so I spoke with the county attorney because I had read his opinion and I believed he was correct. I think that had the sheriff not taken the commissioner's offer of voluntarily going on leave, administrative leave, that then the delegation could have and would have been petitioned to remove him. That clearly is our legal authority and only we could do that. However, since he did take the offer and agreed to it in writing, that it's a different situation. So before we have any further discussion, I want to hear from the county attorney with regard to his position on the question of whether the commissioners did what they have the authority to do, and whether we have to have any further role in it or not. So,
thank you. And I thank everyone for their comments. I appreciated Representative Potenza calling me yesterday. This is an extremely complicated situation. There really are no right line statutes that act as bumpers for when an elected official does the things that Sheriff Graves accused of doing, and then acts in a recalcitrant manner saying, I'm not going to stop administering my office. Okay, a couple of things typically happen. When someone is accused of those crimes, they typically voluntarily step away without being asked. And so we don't face the dilemma that we were facing a week or two ago, which was an office, pardon my saying this, chief deputy, but an office that was tearing itself apart, lawsuits, potential lawsuits that were mounting, and a leader who was staying on accused of some very serious crimes, not just accused, but now charged by the Department of Justice with the most serious crimes of dishonesty that you can be charged with, staining potentially that office in the eyes of the public. There was an extreme urgency to find a way to neutralize this situation, both for the staff as well as, frankly, for Sheriff Brave. And I don't mind telling you that I had a conversation with Sheriff Brave while he was still on, indicating to him from the time of the AG letter, you might want to step away because anything you say in happenstance to your staff could be construed as witness tampering. I was actually trying to protect him at that time because I didn't know what the contents of that investigation were either. So this is a very complicated, multifaceted situation that is happening in real time, and we're trying to make sure we're doing what we can for the staff as well as for the sheriff.
For the people of Strafford County.
So the authority issue, I did put on paper what I believe is the appropriate authority. This is an interesting situation, again, from 2004 forward, when Dan Linehan was sheriff down in Rockingham County. Some of this was examined. It was only examined in the sphere of budgetary issues, not in the sphere of disciplinary issues. And so a lot of questions were left unanswered by our Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court did reaffirm that the sheriff is not an island unto himself, just by happenstance of that constitutional office. And there, you know, if you go back and read the cases, the Supreme Court always points out very clearly, this is an office that existed before the Constitution. So all of those common law aspects of what the inherent powers of the office were from the merry old days of England are still vested in the sheriff, but they are not limitless. All right, so from Linehan forward, which is again is a 2004 case that I cited in my memo to you folks, it is recognized that the commissioners do in fact have important, at least budgetary constraints over the sheriff, and they also have personnel policy constraints over members of the office. And now the question becomes, and I recognize this question, well, is the sheriff an employee or is he an elected official? This is an interesting situation because the sheriff did sign off on those personnel policies, just as I have. And we adhere to those personnel policies. If we didn't, then that would truly mean that the sheriff has absolutely no authority over him. It can start harassing people with no recourse through the personnel policies. It could do all sorts of terrible things. That's what Linehan talks about, and puts aside whether deputies and by force, the sheriff could be applicable to those. Well, Strafford County made those policies applicable to the sheriff. So I just wanted to give you some of the meat on the bone. I gave you the bones in that memo. when Representative Penz and I were speaking yesterday, she did cite something that I didn't discuss in the memo to you, and I appreciated her bringing it to my attention. That is particular RSA 23:7, which talks about establishing compensation for elected officials. And there's no question that the Strafford County delegation, any of the 10 delegations, has the sole authority to set the rate of compensation for us elected officials. And no one is questioning that at all. What I would direct everyone's attention to, and I thought about this after we spoke, Representative Petendra, I didn't have a chance to circle back to you, is if you look at a prior statute right in that same sequence, 23:5, it's called payment of salaries. And it says the salaries of the county attorneys, sheriffs, and county treasurers shall be paid from the county treasury in equal payments as determined by the county commissioners. This, folks, is really the crux of what we were wrestling with, which is the constitutional issue of the separation of powers. You all set the rate of pay, but it's very clear from the statutes and from Linehan that it's the commissioners that determine how that bottom line gets paid out. And that includes from this statute, 23:5, for every single one of us elected officials. What they did, and I tried to give you some of the rationale getting inside of our meetings and why we said, how can we limit the liability? How can we limit the cost to the people of Strafford County through the sheriff staying on and added lawsuits, us putting him out on leave, and then somehow this whole thing blows up and then we're paying not only back pay, but attorney's fees, going out on paid leave, which seemed to be the safest, and that's what the commissioners ended up settling on, or the fourth thing, which was sort of the atomic possibility of coming to you with a petition to remove, which I will tell you, I did draft. It's drafted. It's sitting in this folder in my hand right now. We would have done that. But there would have been a significant amount of delay inherent in bringing that petition to remove, which would have gone back to the problems with doing nothing or giving an option of leave without pay and the sheriff saying no, because that's a very unattractive option. And we would have been stuck with that. And I will tell you that I don't want to get into it because personnel issues, but there were exigent, critical issues with staff that were happening in real time that it would have been a very bad situation if he had stayed on just even for a couple more days. He signed that agreement on the 23rd, and I'm telling you, it was just in time before we might have lost a significant portion of that office. And Joe, if I'm exaggerating, please chime in.
I agree 100%. It was at a critical point where we had to raise it up above to the powers to be, so to speak, for the legal opinions. Attorney's right. It was at a critical point where we were either going to get saved by the AG's office, and we'll call it the cavalry, or we were going to an implosion. And that was going to happen the following week after the sheriff was arrested. And I predicted what the sheriff was planning on putting in place by Monday morning. I fully believed in my heart that the office would have completely imploded by Wednesday, including myself. We would have all been out of there because I won't go into the conditions that he was proposing, but it was going to be deplorable and no one could stand by for that. Everyone in the sheriff's office, with the way things are, not only in this state, but every state, is very marketable. They all have job offers on the table right now. Any one of them can go to any police department that they want, if you're certified, also with like a sign-on bonus. So to get these people back would have been impossible. And as Mr. Bauer alluded to earlier, without the sheriff's office, you don't have all of that revenue of bodies housed at the jail across the street. We've met with U.S. Marshals, immigration. Everything's predicated on the transportation issues. The U.S. Marshals cannot staff transportation. They cannot staff hospitalizations. They rely on us. And that's not just in Strafford County, that's nationwide. They're a small organization, only about 10 to 15,000 agents, but that's nationwide. And you get to the Concord office, the Portland office, they're very small offices. They rely on us. So they cannot house people here without all of that ancillary support. And that's what we provide. And that's what Mr. Bauer was saying. We have to make sure we have these transports funded and we have the people to do them. If that whole unit disappears, we don't replace them very easily, and we're going to lose that revenue as well.
Thank you, Joe. So these are some of the intangibles that aren't out in the general knowledge. which go directly to what the Supreme Court describes as having the general management and control of the financial affairs of the county and the management and control of its property, which is vested squarely with the county commissioners. That's what they were trying to manage through this whole process, which is not have even more loss to the people of Strafford County and preserve what we have. Again, I'm looking at the statutes. I see that you folks as state legislators have to be invited into a process of removing an elected official. Okay, I have to file a petition, a majority of the county commissioners or a Superior Court judge, and I'll just share with you, by the way, I did inquire from Rockingham Superior Court because they're taking this case as a conflict if that judge would be willing to do that, and they flat out said no. So in actuality, it would have been either myself or a majority of the county commissioners. But the point is, you folks have to be invited in. You don't have any authority other than being invited into a removal. And with all due respect to other opinions, the statutes are entirely silent other than you folks setting the salary. The management of that salary is with those folks. And that's a simple separation of powers between legislative and executive branches. I do believe and I appreciate Attorney Representative Potenza so much for calling me and sharing her views. And I always welcome any of you to do so. I used to do that a lot more. I used to always host you in my office. I miss seeing some of you. But at any rate, I appreciate her picking up the phone and calling, but I don't agree that 23.7 answers the question that is on the table. I don't think it applies, and that's why it was not part of my analysis. I do think, however, 23.5 answers that question, which is the payment of money. How the monies which you folks set are paid out, again, is in that general management sphere that the Supreme Court has recognized for over 100 years for county commissioners working not entirely within the ambit of an elected official like myself, but sometimes overlapping. If you look at it conversely, this situation, other than a petition to remove, there would be no check on someone like me or the sheriff or Kathy running amok and destroying an office, other than the nuclear response of a petition to remove. There has to be some sort of middle ground. And certainly the case law that I've cited to you gives the commissioners that. Our own policies give that. We're in a unique situation from Linehan, again, where our deputies do sign off on these policies. They say, yes, we will comply with these policies. And the sheriff did that. I checked with HR and he signed them in 2017. So we have a lot more comfort in this than maybe the commissioners did in the Linehan case, although the commissioners there did mostly prevail, saying the sheriff is not the high almighty sheriff. He or she is just the sheriff, and there are rules that need to be followed. So that was a little more meat on my analysis. I know my email maybe didn't answer all those questions. And I'm not saying that this is, that there are crystal clear guidelines for how to do this. We are in somewhat uncharted territory, but that's where you do try to make a common sense application of what is out there, of the authority that is vested to the commissioners that have been recognized for many, many years, who are the boots on the ground to try to solve these problems for all of us to prevent the big jackpots that could happen. And I believe that they have exercised their executive function here appropriately. And I thank you for your time.
And let me just point out that when we set the salaries, we do that in advance of each term. It's not something that's ongoing. We do it, the delegation authorizes those authorities in advance of the term. So it's not, we have an ongoing responsibility there. Anyway, Representative Harrington, you had a...
Yeah, I certainly defer to Tom's legal opinion, but my experience when I was a commissioner at the PUC, I learned one thing about laws and lawyers, that for any given law, if you have 6 or 7 lawyers, you can have 6 or 7 different opinions. And I just think because this is so highly exposed, and because, as Tom said, there's no bright lines here, this is an interpretation of the law because there is no specifics to the law. Would it hurt for us to have a county delegation and just say, we concur with the action of the commissioners? So if someone did challenge this, then we would have, belt and suspenders on it. And it would probably take some of the heat off of them because, they would have been backed up by the delegation. Just something to think about.
Well, I'm reluctant to go to the delegation not all the expense involved, that's small.
But we're gonna have one
Right, right,
anyways,
yeah.
coming up for the replacement, so. It's
Well, I think
affirmation vote.
I don't think we should do that now. But I'm open to the idea that we can confer, with regard to the ratification of the action subsequently, and I think, that might be a bad idea to research that.
Yeah, I'm not talking about any type of formal procedure other than the delegation has reviewed the action of the commissions and we concur with those actions.
Can I speak? Because it's just a follow-up to what he said real quick. Okay. So, and I just want to read this because the county commissioners are elected by the voters in each county commission district in the county, RSA 653(1). They have the general management and control of the financial affairs of the county. We understand that a management control of its property except limited by powers of the county convention. Again, RSA 661(9) specifically grants disciplinary action of a sheriff and others to the convention. So there's nowhere in the statute that it allows for any alternative disciplinary action, including leave with pay. So I think that the thing that's clear here is RSA 2810. It deals with employees, and that's where I think you were coming from. But an elected official is not quote unquote an employee. The statute makes many differentiations between a public employee and an elected official. And in this section, affected elected officials and the verbiage contained in 661 would be unnecessary. So I just believe that we should just exactly what he just said, Rep. Harrington just said. I like that idea. We haven't had a full delegation meeting for quite some time. There's been a lot of quiet around there. I've received a gazillion phone calls from constituents, what's going on in Strafford County, even just from fellow, of course, representatives, and we didn't have any information. And so, and then you have, of course, news sources that come out and they're saying things. And of course, even the sheriff himself that comes out and has, allegations as well. So I just think it would be a good idea for us to button that up. And I agree with what was done. That's great. I think there's a gray area and maybe it's an opportunity for us to do a bill or something like that, right, to define it. But here's, I still think having a full delegation meeting, not just about replacement, is necessary.
I do think that further research into it is probably a very good idea. So first, Representative Seeley, followed by Representative Newton and Representative Horner.
So while we have Attorney Velarde here, I just, some of the questions I've been getting from my constituents have related to essentially the equivalent of Lori's list. And if there's implications for any cases the sheriff was, where he was involved in transport or anything else in terms of whether that may have an impact on court cases. I've had a number of questions about obviously the trustworthiness of your office, not because of you, but because of what people are perceiving in the paper. And because I've learned about things through social media and Foster's and from people calling me rather than any other source. I've had to tell people I have no answers for them, but that I would inquire. And so I don't expect all those answers now, but if at some point we could get some sort of, whether from your office or a combination of offices, some sort of guidance about how we should be responding to our constituents, especially as a new representative. There's a lot of things that I generally don't know that I'm still learning, but obviously this is not a typical situation. And I've been working very hard and practicing my language for threading the needle of answering appropriately, but I want to make sure that we're not stepping outside of the boundaries of anything, and also that I'm accurately responding.
No, thank you, Representative Seelig. That's, as we're all trying to talk to constituents and assure them that things haven't gone totally awry. This is a very good topic. So here's how the Lori list, or the exculpatory evidence schedule, works, which is obviously the Department of Justice is now prosecuting Mr. Braves, and they are well aware of what's going on. They are making all the internal referrals that need to be made. I can tell you that Police Standards and Training is very interested in what his current ability to have law enforcement credentials is. We are cooperating with all of those outside agencies. They're acting independently from us, but we are cooperating with them. Also, in regards to past cases that might be tainted, I guess this comes in handy, which is that the sheriff wasn't exactly doing a lot of casework. So, the EES is for cases that are going to trial. So one would presume that the premise of that would be some sort of motor vehicle or criminal enterprise that the officer would be testifying about. We will not have that problem with Mark Brave. He just simply was not involved with those kinds of situations as the elected official. But that is something that I want to give you this information to assure your constituents. We've already looked at that. And we want to make, if there had been a situation where he had been involved and had been in a testimonial situation, what I've done in the rare instance when that has happened is I've gone back and called the accused person who may or may, whether they're convicted or not, and told them, you should have been informed about this. And if you want to reopen your case, I will not stand in your way of reopening your case. We just simply don't have that situation here, which is, again, a convenience for sure. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, the reference to you're giving your opinion, was that to the email sent by former Representative Steve Bowden?
There were actually two requests. One was from former Representative Bowden, one was from current Representative Turcotte.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I would offer that we do an official letter of request to get it straightened out to the attorney, get a reply or an opinion in writing to the delegation. That's a good place to start. And if Kelly would want to be, I don't want to say Republican Democrat side, but there's two sides to the aisle. If both sides can draft a letter with their concerns on behalf of the delegation or through you. So we have the delegation themselves asking for an opinion. And then the attorney gives an opinion to the delegation and not to two people that have sent email. I think that would be a good way to start as far as the formality and covering the formality of what we're dealing with here. I will remind everybody we operate under Dillon Rule, and Dillon Rule is not about case law. Dillon Rule is about laws that are on the books and how the state only gives the authority to the cities and counties that they give. And the cities and counties can't say, because there's case law, we can do this. That isn't how it works. I asked these, Ann Bickford, who was a wonderful person, who was the legislative researcher, how the county operates. And that's what the information she gave me. It's Dillon law that we operate under. So we have to keep that in mind too. If there's no law that specifically deals with this or gives them the authority to do it, they can't do it, no matter what case law says.
Could I just reiterate again, 23.5, if we're looking for a specific law that comes awfully close, 23.5 answers the issue, payment of salaries. This is how the commissioner is elected to pay his salary. That's your authority. If you're looking for a clear statute. But I appreciate that powers are conferred, but the Supreme Court has conferred this power on the commissioners. It's inherent in the office of county commissioner. I'm not going to disregard the Supreme Court in regards to what the separation of powers looks like.
Yeah. Just a point of order, and I'm sorry, I do have to leave it too. I just wanted to make sure, did you write your response to two people, or was the response for the whole delegation?
The second response, which to Mr. Bowden, I believe was given to all of you.
Yeah.
As executive.
So it was for the whole delegation.
Just
the question came from one.
No, just the executive committee.
He asked for the writing to be distributed to the executive committee.
Thank you.
Is what I did.
Okay.
I immediately had it sent to all the executive committee members, and that's why we have it.
So part of it could be that that goes to the whole delegation.
I don't have any objection for going to the delegation.
Sorry, I have to go.
But I answered his request. So I think that seeking further legal input, which is not a bad idea, because to the degree that we get into the delegation, we're talking about a delay because you can't do it immediately and have to give notice and all that kind of stuff. So I think I'm relying on the county attorney's opinion, which I think is pretty well established. Within the statutes as they exist, there are, as you said, some cases there are no black lines. And so it's something that you're suggesting that further legislation is probably not a bad idea because this is, open season. Yes, Representative Horton.
Well, yes, if I understand the situation correctly, the administrative leave is not strictly a disciplinary action. I remember you said it is that are requesting it that his physical and mental health and adversely affected him has problems, obviously huge problems for personal life. So it seems to me 651.9 is interpreted. It seems like an unreasonable interpretation of 651.9 say that any elected county official can't take leave of absence without waiting for the whole delegation to meet. And certainly you imagine situations where a person has problems that aren't necessarily related to criminal investigation or conduct in office, but still like rendered them capable of dealing with their job.
So
Yes, but that came out after.
I do think it is that administrative leave is not.
That was after.
Is not some form of punishment.
Yes.
So anyway, yes, Representative.
Yeah, I just wanted to state that I wanted to agree with Representative Newton as well as Representative Penza that I think that we need to make sure that we're covering all of our bases. I think that sorry, I almost called you representative. I think that Attorney Velarde is making some really good points, and I think that we have a very solid argument we can go off of. But because things are not 100% clear, I think that because of that, it is good to be 100% certain that we are within the bounds of the law.
Okay. I think we are. Yeah. Based on the county attorney's opinion.
I should probably add, just to make everyone feel a little better, the employment lawyer did actually write the agreement. So an employment lawyer did that, not me.
Okay, so I think I'm reluctant to take any further action at this point without further consultation and opportunity to review everything. Okay, so this is.
Yeah, that's just the request for the meeting.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and to be honest, I have
happy to.
Yeah, I have spoken with a handful of our friends across the aisle, and they're all happy to have a delegation meeting as well. I think it's great for the public because we're in this small room right here, and there's no place for them to talk. And maybe we'll have some more.
This is all on Zoom.
I know, but it's a little different,
Right, but this is not a closed meeting. A public meeting. So anyway, I take this under advisement and thank you very much. And so I think that's if there's something to the contrary that we will move on to. Sorry.
Yeah, we still under other business.
We're still haven't closed off 11 yet.
Well, if I could get the indulgence of the delegation, the executive committee. This is a long meeting. I get that. But this is the end of it. And I wanted to hold out the executive committee to know what I'm trying to do is trying to get a coalition together between the Republican caucus and the Democrats to as universally as we can move forward with the nursing home, the new nursing home. And I've opened up the Commissioner knows about it, Ray Bauer knows, and the chairman knows that I've tried to open up communication levels and answer questions and get everybody on the same page as much as we can. I know that's almost impossible to do. And I've got to share with you, it's been a little difficult with for me at the least to get this accomplished. I haven't had the cooperation that I would like to think I was going to get from some people. And I like to go by original intent document. If you have original intent document, it's there in front of you. You say, this is a document, this is what I've got in. And it's late. I could go on for hours with what I've been against. But I'll give you a quick example. I was at the building committee meeting and I've asked for documents, we control the money. Okay, how much money has been spent so far in the nursing home? Simple questions, kind of simple. And I didn't get a direct answer. So I went to the building committee meeting and I was handed this document by Mr. Bauer. And he said, this is the latest invoice we've got. This is where we're at. And I asked, and he said that we had spent $145,000 to date, which was, I think, July 19th, approximately around then. So I get this document and I get looking at it. And it's, to make a long story short, it's from Warren Street. And the invoice date is 5/31/2023, billing through 5/31/23. Now, unless I misheard, Mr. Bauer said that they got this is a document they got Thursday, the Thursday before last Wednesday. And it has numbers on it. It says, what is due, balance due, bill to date, $205,784, paid to date, $72,511, balance due, $132,270. And the check pay date is 8/17/23. So I'm going back through my document dump. I got a document dump. I asked for all the documents dealing with the new nursing home. Again, I'm trying to get information to get to everybody and to get a consensus where we can agree more than 1 or 2 votes to pass bonding. And I found this in my documents, and this is another invoice from Warren Street Architects. It's dated 7/31/2023. So this is 2 months after the one that's supposed to be the most recent one. And this one has a bill to date $365,123, paid to date $72,511, balance due $292,611, and the check pay date again 8/17/23. So what am I supposed to do with this information as I get it? It's like, you know, this one is 100,000 or more than what I was told was the most recent one. And I can give you more examples like that I've been dealing with. And it's a little frustrating for me because I've got to try to make head and the tails of this, just going on what I've got for original intent document. Now, when I asked for the documents, I'll share with you that I got an 8-inch thick section of papers. And that was at a commissioner's meeting. I stopped in and Ray again, when he runs into me, he gives me stuff 8 inches high. And I said, Ray, I said, is this isn't any of this on electronic format? He said, no, it isn't. So another representative a short time later asked Ray, geez, some of the stuff Cliff got, I'd be interested in getting, can I get it? And he said, and Ray says, yeah, it's on electronic format. But I had to get eight inches of it. So whether they made it after they give it to me, that's another thing I don't know. But the point I'm getting at is it's very difficult to try to make head and the tails of this when you ask a simple question like, is the county liable to pay the loan back if we spend the 15 million and we don't do what we say we're going to do? And the answer I got was, and it was in a letter we all got, there's official letters, there's 2 of them. It said the county would never do that. But if you look, I could have got the answer, which was the correct answer. It said, you look at the contract with Gopher and page 8 or 9, section 5 says payments. It states that if the county defaults on what we're supposed to do, the county will have to pay the loan back at a rate of $1.2 million a month till it's paid off. Now that's serious business to me, in the sense that we can't have the taxpayers from Strafford, from Milton, all of a sudden there's a bill $1.2 million a month. So that's why I'm asking the questions like, can we spend, if we got the Gopher money guaranteeing that we're going to spend $40 million that we haven't appropriated, and somehow that doesn't go through because the last I checked, we don't have the numbers to vote for any bonding, then what happens next? And can we spend the 15 million, or can we work just on the 6.2 million we have spent, that number, 40% of that number, which Gopher, everything to deal with Gopher is based on the 40%. 40%, it can't be more than 40% of what you're spending. So these are the questions I've got, and I'm having a very difficult time getting answers. And I don't know if I could ask Ray, when you send information out, could you send it to me also? Because I had to read, I'm on the building committee. I read in the Fosters a day or two before we're meeting that there's a new plan. You know, it's just a bad way to do stuff. I've got the floor if I could, and certainly after you can talk.
I'm not trying to interrupt you, Mr. Representative Newton.
But the other thing, and this was troubling to me, is there's a letter from Strafford County Commissioners, and actually it's in their official letterhead, and it's dated June 23rd, 2023, and it's the first letter in CAFA, CAFI, yeah, and it's addressed to the taxpayers of Strafford County, New Hampshire, and I read everything. When I get an 8-inch page of high documents, you can believe I'm going to go through them all. I'm going to read them all. That's just what I do. And in this letter to the Strafford County taxpayers is troubling to me because when it discusses the nursing home, and he kind of clarified it today to a degree, but when it mentions the nursing home, it says that.
Who's this letter signed by?
The letter is signed by Ray Bauer and Pam Arnold. And it said long-term financial planning. Strafford County is it's currently in the process of planning and designing a new state-of-the-art 250-bed nursing home. In August 2022, the Strafford County delegation approved a supplemental appropriation of $170 million to design and construct this new nursing home, which will be accounted for in a capital projects fund. In December of 22, the delegation approved the issuance of bonds in the amount of $6,261,000 for the planning design phase of the new nursing home. In February, the Strafford County received funding from the state in the amount of $15,534,000 towards the cost in designing and constructing of a new nursing home. The county has not issued any bonds for this project as it plans to use the state funding prior to the issuance of any bonds. And in my mind, that I read this where the state has got the county, I apologize for getting messed up. The county is going to use the $15 million before they use anything else. That's what this simply reads. And I found out today that Ray is now saying he's not going to spend all of that. But this is an official letter. And it's an official letter with the county head on it. And then there's another official letter to me. And this official letter is in, if you go to the CAFA report for 2022, and it's in the county homepage or website, and it's very good. They're putting a lot more stuff in there. You've got to go to finance, I think, to find that. So here's a letter, official letter dated July 31st, 2023. And I asked that question. And let's see. Yeah, what are you gonna do with the money? And he said in this one, blah, 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 blah. Okay, the county is spending the the county spend funding received from the state without approval from the executive committee. The county is spending money that is authorized by the delegation. And the point I'm getting at is he's saying, well, he's spending money authorized by the delegation, which was only the bonded money. So are we using the bonded money or are we using the state money? And what Ray has said is the money they're using to pay stuff for now appears to be coming out of the cash flow money. So how do you put this together when you get original intent documents with conflicting messages? And I can sit here for 2 hours and tell you time and again of the stuff that I'm going through to try to get this information. I've got right now, and I haven't acted on it in a couple of months because it's constantly changing. I've got a 58-page report on just the nursing home, what's been happening with the nursing home. And there's a long ways to go. And it would be very helpful if I could get original intent documents and not chase them down and not filter through things. And that way, if I had a question, I could get a hold of Ray and ask him and not sit there going, what the hell is going on here? And it's frustrating for me because I can kind of decipher stuff pretty good. I'm not the smartest person on the planet, but you know, I can read the document, kind of get where it's at. And if you've seen here before, if I can, and the question is answered, I don't argue it. I accept it and say, well, that's good to know that you've got that. But as I go forward with this, the Republican caucus has asked me to be like their spokesman for this. And I see this as a positive. And some of this could be that we don't have any venue to have discussions and to have debate. And that's so wrong for this delegation. I've heard, oh, it costs money to bring the delegation forward to have a debate or to have a workshop. We had 2 workshops and they were very, very informational. And I thought they were very positive. So the money that it requires to have a delegational meeting, I guess if that's an issue, I'll waive my whatever little stipend I get to come here to a meeting. So we can all get together and we can talk, because part of me thinks, and it's a bad negative thought, that there's people that want us to keep fighting between ourselves and amongst ourselves because it's a 2-to-1 vote. When I think if we got together and we talk, we could find common ground on a lot of things. Well, there's no opportunity to. Because we meet here when they want money. The executive committee says, okay, we go to the delegation, we take the legal vote to give them more money, and then we do nothing countywide for 3 or 4 more months. When all of this stuff is happening in the background, that's causing festers to boil. And if this stuff could be dealt with when it's discovered or near when it's discovered, I think we'd be in a lot better shape than we're in now. And it isn't bad, it isn't hopeless, but it's a lot more difficult to get where we need to get. The nursing home, the new concept is much better than the old one. Goes away from the Taj Mahal quite a bit. It's on a good piece of property or a better piece now. If we hadn't stopped that bonding and gone forward with what they admit is a bad plan, that's been admitted. The first plan that was voted, 2-to-1 to appropriate the money, but bonding never happened, and it still isn't going to happen. We'd have been stuck with a bad plan. And according to this, almost maybe we could have run into 600,000 in wetlands mitigation and added 2 to 3 years to the project to build it. So the fact that we've slowed down a little is nothing but a good thing. And the fact that I respect everybody's opinion in this room. And I think everybody has an opinion. But I don't get to hear your opinions very often because there's no venue for it. So I needed to get that out there to kind of let you guys know what I'm going through here. And it's very frustrating on my part because I see things and it may not be exactly the way it is, but it's not far off. When a simple correction or a question could take care of it, but I'm having a chase. I got to tell you, I was a little pissed when I found out that I couldn't get those documents in electronic format, but another representative could. I didn't think that I don't take that the right way. And I'm hoping it was just because when I got them, they transferred them to electronic format, but IT could tell when they were done. And that's the frustration that I'm dealing with. Getting stuff like that, document dumps, if you will, and having papers thrown at me with no explanation of them. And then I find out there's other papers. I find letters that were dated in August and September. And then I find the same letter in the new package after December 5th, dated December 5th. It's like, this is the same letter. The only thing changed was the dates. And what am I supposed to do with that information? Just forget that it's happening? There's a date on the letter that's in the new contract. And I saw it in the old letter, and the date on the new contract is 2002. And it has to deal with the line of the people who are lined up to do the testing at the old proposed site. And that was in August of 2022. So when they changed the dates, it got changed to 2002. So there's dates being changed, there's things happening. The contract is a kind of a miracle contract we voted on the on the 6.2 million December 5th. The cover page for the new contract is December 5th. But we didn't vote on that appropriation until 9:30 at night. This is the stuff I'm like, my head is exploding. It's like, what is going on here? And how do we as a delegation that controls the purse strings, how do we get a handle on this and wrap our heads around this when this type of stuff is going on? I can show documents for everything I've said here and more. So I wanted the executive committee to know this is kind of what I'm dealing with here. And even to the point, I got the phone, I'll finish soon. A lot of my constituents are saying, what the hell is going on with the credit cards? This money started happening August of 2022. How much money a year is run through credit cards for the Citizens Bank to pay for the credit cards? Can anybody give me a top of their head guess or an estimate of how much a year runs through the county credit cards through Citizens Bank?
No.
I can tell you what I found. I went and early in the year, I went through to the county and I said, I want to see the check manifest. So I got the check manifest, and as I was looking through, it took me a little while to figure out what I was looking at. And as I went through it, I kept seeing, and I didn't record it till March because it started saying, hey, there's a lot of money going to Citizens Bank. And I don't know what it's for, but there's a substantial amount. So I asked Ray at a meeting, I said, Ray, what is the money in the Citizens Bank? He said, that's our credit cards. So Citizens Bank, 331, $7,742, 47, $40,072, 414, 783, 55, 36,910, 512, 17,295. So I went to 714, and then I went to 12.1 because I was looking for something specific, and I found this while I was looking. So, and these numbers may not be exactly accurate, but they're close. So from 331 to 714 and then 12.1, there's a total of 187,643 that's gone through county credit card. So if you use that number as a general number, there's probably $500,000 a year that goes through county credit cards. So when somebody asks me, what is the checks and balances? Because they didn't find this till, it started in August of 2022, and they didn't find it till April. And if somebody asks me, what if somebody is sent to Home Depot to get 22x4s, and they buy 40 and they stop at their house and drop 20 off and then bring the other 20 back and turn the receipt in, and nobody counts the 2x4s? How do we know that's not happening? And I don't know how we know. That's the county's business. It's our business because it's the money. But I don't think you'll find me telling the county how to run their business, because that's your job. The county commissioners and Ray, that's their job to run the business. Our job is to control the purse strings. And if we should find that this credit card problem is a red flag, one of the things we can do under the commissioner's RSAs is we can ask for an audit. And we can ask for an audit on the credit cards and the travel for the last 2 years. The county delegation can do that through the county commissioner's laws. And if I'm taking up your time, I've got the law here in front of me. So we need to know that, because I'm getting people asking me that. You know, I went to Demoulas 2 days ago. I'm looking at the hamburger. I'm looking at 80% and 85% because I don't know if I want to pay the difference. And I got people telling me, you're looking at the hamburger, there's people on county credit cards buying filet mignons and steak tips and all this stuff. And they're telling me that. And I'm like, that's not my business, but the money part is. So this is what's out there, folks. And I really think it's important that we at least start discussing this in a workshop and try to get to the bottom of what our job is and how we can do it the best we can do it. And it's not telling them what to do, it's the purse strings.
Well.
I just have to say something. Expressions are big, so when he's speaking, I'm watching your reactions the whole time in your.
Because I can't believe what I'm hearing.
Okay, well, you know, there's respect is got to go both ways, right? So you have to, you know, he's respecting you. He wasn't doing that. You're not respecting him. So everybody in this room can see that. Like, it would just be like if you started speaking and I'm, you know, making all these faces. It's disrespectful. So if you have something to say, please say it to the whole group.
Well, that was kind of a stream of consciousness that we were hearing from Representative Newton for quite a while, and it was quite wide ranging, covering a number of topics, but that's one of the reasons we have an executive committee, is so that we have a smaller forum because, you know,
I would like to thank the delegation.
Some of the bigger counties like Rockingham and Hillsborough, they make us look like a phone booth. Okay. I mean, seriously.
No, they're huge.
Hillsborough County has 412,000 people roughly. We have 140. Okay, so anyway, sorry, Representative.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to the fact that at this current moment, because of the situation that has happened with the sheriffs and the commissioner's job of handling the situation, in finding out what happened with those county credit cards, like you just said, I think that we've done a good job of figuring out that there was a problem, and we're currently in the steps of trying to resolve that issue. So going after another audit and saying that there may be additional discrepancies, I feel is a bit too quick of an action.
Well, I'd like to give Ray an opportunity to respond. Representative Burnham, I hear, can we hear? Because the thing is, Representative Newton has raised a number of issues, all of which are, you know, things that we ought to have as much information about, as much understanding of as possible. Okay, and before the bag is too big and bursts, I think we need to have some response with regard to some of the things that were raised, because I saw you raise your hand a long while ago. And so let's hear the other, not the other side, but some response.
I can only tell you that I can't possibly respond to everything Representative Newton said. I have no way of recording any of that information, but what I can say to you is, I know nothing about, Representative Newton asked us for every document that had something to do with the nursing home. So he was provided every document that had something to do with the nursing home, which he's right, was 800 pages of documents. There is no electronic version of those 800 pages. So whatever electronic version or whatever in electronic version somebody asked for was not that, and certainly not that extensive. But we worked, or the staff worked really hard to provide him with those 800 pages of documents. And we looked through every single thing we had, because we know that's what Representative Newton asked for. So that's what we provided him. So for him to now say that it was available in some other form, it's not. It's still not available in some other form. We didn't take those 800 pages and scan them in and send them to anybody else. Some of those 800 pages that he got were definitely available in electronic documents. But because we couldn't give them all 800 pages in electronic documents, we, instead of saying, well, look at this electronic document, we'll give this one to you in paper, we'll give this one, we just printed everything out and gave it to them. So, you know, that's one of the explanations. The other explanation is, when Representative Newton asked me what was expended so far in the project, I gave him the number. When he came in, we had gotten another bill that was due to be paid within the day of the meeting. So I gave him that bill. That was in addition, new bill, that was in addition to what had already been paid. So I said, instead of writing him another letter, I said, here's a copy of what we paid today, or we're gonna pay tomorrow. So, I mean, those are just a couple of things that stick out in my mind. Anyone, look at, I'm not stupid. I know that we can't possibly get a new nursing home, which we desperately need, without some support from the Republican representatives, all who have voted no. I know that. So for anybody to think that we're trying to create some obstacle to make it, to encourage them to vote no, it makes no sense. You know, and if I have somehow fallen short in giving you information that you've asked for, and as far as I know, I provided everything within 48 hours, except when I had a hip replacement, which I was out a little bit longer. If, as far as I know, I've provided you every piece of information that you've asked for. And if there's something I've missed, bring it to my attention and I'll make sure you get it. But, you know, those are quick answers. I couldn't possibly answer everything he's asked for. So I'll just leave it at that.
Representative Burnham, I believe you had your hand up earlier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This actually isn't over, Mr. Bauer. So when, and it goes to the credit card issue, like this has been, the process of getting a credit card paid. I'm assuming it's a monthly statement.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm assuming that the ones that are holding the credit card processes their own statement to someone.
To accounting.
With backing, with receipts.
That's correct. 100% right.
Then from there, procedural, this is usually pretty much business standard.
Yes, ma'am.
Then it's approved for payment.
By the commissioners.
By the commissioner.
And the treasurer in separate acts.
So two separate approvals for payment. So then it goes through the payment process.
Yes, ma'am.
The checks are printed. Someone signs it.
Well, they're printed and it's an automatic.
Okay, so then it's not hands written, it's just, okay, very good. So that takes care of the two treasurer and commissioner approval. So I guess questions that arise is how in this process of over a year of these payments, and I know we can't really discuss it, but it is this another question rising about additional cards. How is this process being overseen or missed, which is we've been learning without.
It's really simple with the sheriff. Okay, he lied on his credit card receipts. He had handwritten receipts and he made up. And I'm not saying anything out of school. Yeah. There's a 24-page affidavit available for you to read, and in that affidavit you'll see how he intentionally deceived the opinion of the Attorney General. Office of Public Integrity is he intentionally deceived the accounting department, the commissioners, the treasurer, by putting down that they were for law enforcement purposes. And he listed the law enforcement purposes that he put down, and he has every right to spend the money that's in his budget for a law enforcement purpose. And in fact, if when you read Linehan as the county attorney has mentioned, Linehan says that the commissioners have no authority over his law enforcement portion of his operation. We have I guess when the people elect the highest law enforcement officer in the county, that's what it's called, and he writes on there in his personal handwriting and his personal signature that he did this particular law enforcement function, you have the tendency to believe him. Okay, and it was one that I finally saw that I disbelieved, that I brought forward, and then that created an investigation backwards to that date and then forwards to current dates. You know, did I wish I caught it sooner? Sure. But he just lied, and he documented his lie with his own handwriting and his own signature. And I think that, I don't know, I feel I would certainly have I don't do bills. Okay. That's not part of my job's the nursing home, the supervise all of the operation. but, you know, this came to my attention, was brought to my attention, and it didn't pass the sniff test. Frankly, I confronted him with it. It really didn't pass the sniff test. So I turned it over to the proper legal authority. And they went backwards and found a number of similar things where he lied. Their opinion. I'm not presuming guilt here. I want to make sure that that's clear. But he lied and on the documentation, and it was supported as a law enforcement function. Which, if you look at the book, the budget book, the yellow book that you all voted on earlier, it provides for that expenditure in that line item. So the line item that he spent out of says that he would travel and learn from other law enforcement entities, you know, so that he could grow his department. And actually those things that he wrote for documentation were consistent with that budget message that we all saw during the budget process. So we have a number of double and triple checks on, on our credit card bills. I will tell you that every single credit card payment is audited, not just one. Every single credit card payment is audited by our independent auditors. You know, the question they had was about a first-class flight, and that's what led me to, you know, to follow up on that, because we don't allow first-class flights. In fact, nobody from the county even travels out of state except that the sheriff had. But again, he documented it as a law enforcement duty that was listed and approved in his budget. He didn't overexpend that line item. He overexpended other line items, but not that one. And so it was.
But wouldn't the receipt have shown the first class flight when the commissioners are looking?
It wasn't clear. I had to make the inquiry, and I said, why, you know, I know this is going to sound strange. I fly JetBlue. I go to Buffalo. I grew up there. Okay. The only place that has a direct flight to Buffalo is JetBlue. So I get the vernacular. Okay. They don't call it first class. They call it even more space seats. They call it, I happen to know what that means because, first of all, I can't afford it, but more importantly, I understand what that vernacular is for JetBlue. They don't call it first class. And so it meant more to me than it probably meant to anybody else, because I fly JetBlue. Hey, I'm a Buffalo Bills fan. I fly to football games in Buffalo on a regular basis. It's the only vacation I take. I don't take vacation. And so I understood what that meant. And I think that gave me the advantage of identifying a possible problem that maybe no one else would have had. And the question from the auditor was, it seemed a little expensive. You know, was it done at the last minute? Because, you know, as anybody knows, a last minute flight is more.
So they looked at the price and that's what, okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to clap my hands, but I was trying to agree with you that that's exactly what I was trying to say.
No,
well, I was glad my message got through, and that's was, and honestly speaking, they weren't going to write us up in the audit. They just, Diane Legere is our finance director, and she is by far one of the best employees I've ever had the pleasure of working with for the 20 plus years she's worked here. She is challenging about the finances. And that's why we've won the finance award 8 years in a row for our audit. Only 8 entities in New Hampshire have this year won that finance award, and we've won it 8 years in a row. And
Well, not this year.
Oh, no, I think the fact that I think we just got it for last year.
We just got it for last year.
But I think this year, because we've researched this and found it, I don't think it's gonna mean we're not gonna win it. We're gonna submit our documents and that's the way it's gonna go. But I did this research with the sheriff. We weren't gonna get written up in the audit. They just said, hey, this is kind of an expensive ticket. So I took it upon myself to confront him with it. And what really tipped me off was part of the documentation that he submitted was for one room with a king size bed. And this is all public information. I'm not speaking out of school or else the county attorney would be giving me dirty looks right now. And so when he indicated to me that he brought another gentleman with him, I tongue in cheek said, who cuddled who? Okay. And because it was kind of a weird situation. And I was trying to get a response from him because it just didn't pass the smell test. And then it went on from there. That's the old cop in me. I was a police officer for 11 years and it just didn't pass the smell test. So that's what made it. But I think it's because I used to be a cop that dealt with people that might be trying to deceive you on a regular basis. And secondarily, I understood what it meant for an even more space seat than what it would have meant for a regular seat, because it didn't say first class.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, I probably said more than you
just a comment to Ray. Ray, it was good for you to explain that. I understand it a lot better. It seems to be the auditors are different in Rochester than here, but the fact that they tipped you that you want to look into this, you did, and that's what we want. That's wonderful.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
The year before, you had a similar incident where you had somebody taking checks for their mother or something, and the auditor says, hey, you want to take a look at this a little better, and you did. And
actually, it was the other way around. I caught that.
Yeah, well, either way, it was brought up during that process. Yeah. And I think that speaks volumes for the work that you do in that aspect. I feel more comfortable in having you explain it that, they said to you, hey, do you do this? He said, no, not really. And you move forward to make something happen, which is good.
He could have given me a good explanation. He could have said, I got short notice, so these are the only seats available. And I probably would have, said, okay, don't do it again. And we don't allow this. And if you can't find a more equitable way to get there, then don't go.
Yeah.
But that's not the path he chose. And when he chose the other path, I just got suspicious and took it from there.
Well, I think we can all recognize that this is a very extraordinary circumstance when the top law enforcement person in Strafford County turns out to be flawed, shall we say, recognizing that we are being recorded here. And that we have a situation in Strafford, in New Hampshire, where the law is a sheriff a lot of power.
Yes.
And for centuries goes back as a traditional situation.
Yeah, I know we all want to kind of wrap this up. My one question, because this came from a constituent, not only in Rochester, but also I have a friend that's in Dover. And so I just don't know how it works. And it probably is for the commissioners. So the employee that the sheriff hired at this crazy high rate, and I forget what her name was. Correct. Which was not qualified at all for that position. Why didn't we stop that?
We can't.
Okay, so
the statute doesn't allow us to do that.
So there was.
However, we did.
Yeah, can you please?
We did, when we found out about it.
Yes.
He did it without our knowledge.
Okay.
When we found out about it, we met with the sheriff and we asked him specifically, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Right?
Yeah.
And he said, she's totally qualified. He lied to us, okay? He deceived us and he lied to us. That wasn't the first time we met with him where he deceived and lied. He did this on multiple occasions.
Well, we learned that now.
We learned that now. But at the time, we were taking him for his word because he's a chief law enforcement official. We have, you know, there are one other thing I had to say to you. There are thousands and thousands of transactions in this government every week. Thousands and thousands, okay? So if somebody wants to be a crook, plain English, okay? They can get deceived us for a little while, but eventually they're gonna get caught. And that's what happened here, okay? There was deception involved for a very long time on a multiple pile of other issues, okay? That you guys don't know about because it wasn't part of the affidavit. But that happened with the commissioners on multiple occasions. He was brought in, I specifically said to him, do not do this again, okay? You can do it within your budget, okay? If you can stay within your budget, but what you've done is wrong, okay? And he says, oh, I promise you. Am I correct? You correct me, Mr. County Attorney, you were sitting there. He goes, I promise you I won't do it again. He goes, but I'm telling you, she's qualified. And he went on and on with her qualifications, which was all erroneous.
And how long was she employed? And weren't the other people in the office, or the other people that were there, weren't they? They must have been put off completely.
They were horrified.
They were horrified. Okay.
And that's exactly what was
part of the problem.
That's exactly what the county attorney was alluding to. By the way, she's no longer employed there. That was exactly what the county attorney was alluding to when he said that the department was about to implode.
Okay.
Well, and honestly, also there is well, secret. There has been since the agreement's in place with the sheriff, and he's agreed not to do any sheriff's duties. There's also been another employee who's no longer employed at the sheriff's department. Okay. And another employee who is demoted and has given their resignation. And if you read the affidavit, you could probably figure out who they are.
Wow. Is it safe to assume the one who lent the car?
I don't get into personnel issues. This is a public.
Not, but this cautious. I have to.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm not saying any names.
Right. Yeah, but that doesn't make any difference. He said it was affidavit, and that was not because
the affidavit's the affidavit.
The affidavit's public.
Well, and going along with that, I believe there was a person that had lent a card. There's got to be policies about lending cards.
Honestly speaking, there is, but he was intimidated. Right. You know, his boss called him up, and immediately that day when I learned about it, we immediately canceled his credit card. Okay. I'm the only one that has the authority to cancel a credit card. That's the way it's set up with Citizens Bank, but. You know, when you're big boss, remember there's several layers between this person and the big boss. When the big boss calls you and says, hey, I need this, I'm stuck, you know, you're kind of intimidated into doing it. But he also was quick to report it to his direct boss, and that got to me, and we canceled his credit card immediately that day. Fortunately, Citizens is that responsive. All I need to do is send a letter and it's canceled that day, like we did with other credit cards.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we need to pull this together.
Yep.
We've been here for.
Before you had a comment? Yeah, so you answered, I think, two of my questions, which is this base, what's in the affidavit is not necessarily entirety you, but the questionable activity that may have happened, and that it's I think you said also earlier, Ray, that it's unusual for county officials to travel out of state as extensively as you did. Or
I've never traveled. I traveled out of state once about 10 years ago because the nursing home won an award.
Yeah.
And the commissioners insisted that I go pick it up. Yeah. We don't travel out of state. We don't do that. The only travel out of state that I recall is I have a brand new director of nurses. You know, relatively brand new. And so I'm working hard to get her educated so that when I leave, you know, I'll be able to leave that nursing home in a, you know, with a solid core team. Of course, Brianna helped screw that up by resigning, but all in tongue in cheek. You know, it's my obligation. And one of the things that the commissioners have dinged me for in my performance evaluation is a failure to have competent people behind me to take over when I leave. So the last couple of years, I've worked really hard at that. You know, I take a low mark to heart. And I've worked really hard at trying to establish that. Hey, I'm 68 years old. I'm almost 69. I'll be 69 in less than a month.
Even older than me, you're older.
And I will, my intention is not to leave for the next few years. But I also understand my obligation to have a structure in place. And the commissioners quickly have pointed that out to me in performance evaluations.
Maybe
We need to.
We gotta wrap this up.
Need to hold this together. Okay, so, yes.
I'll second.
Second. Good.
Well, I thought Janet already got me.
Oh, good.
You said it that quickly that we missed it.